Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. It's the Teams podcast for round 8. A massive and eventful Teams day it was today, particularly with a big overhaul at the Roosters. Rob Sutherland is here, coming to us from the Adelaide Bureau. How is your, working holiday going down there?
Kind of sucks, Thomas, if I'm going to be honest. Everyone else in the family's on holidays and I'm working remotely. So that hasn't been fun. And then the 6 a.m. starts at 5:30 in the morning because bloody Adelaide's
Oh, yeah, that is devastating. Big changes at your Roosters. I'll run through them quickly. Sam Walker's dropped. Joey Manu into the halves. Angus Crichton is back, which is good news. Momirovski's the new centre. Tupouniua's back. You've got Nathan Brown in reserves. He could play. So a whole bunch happening there at your Chooks. What do you make of those changes?
I have to admit, I'm not thrilled about it. I think Sam Walker is the future. Robbo's dropped him in the past. I think it was 2 years ago, middle of the season. He had a bad game, and then Robbo dropped him. If I remember correctly, before the Raiders. Maybe he felt, I think at the time he was getting smashed in the middle in defence. And maybe he's a bit worried about him getting beaten up. Like, the Anzac Day, Tommy, the Dragons are your team, and as bad as they are at any point, they can always get up for Anzac Day, and it becomes a bit of a smash 'em fest. Maybe Robbo's trying to protect him, but that seems strange to me. In a word, no. 2, don't like. 3, don't like it.
Don't like it. Well, yeah, it's always a good leveller, Anzac Day. The Dragons can somehow come out and somewhat match it with the Roosters. In terms of SuperCoach, Joey Manu, I'm a little bit interested in. You've got him at 620 odd K. That's 177K less than his starting price. He's cheap for a reason, but in the halves, we know he goes a fair bit better. And I haven't done the stats yet of him in the halves versus at centre, but we know that it's a fair bit better. Could you be tempted to get on with that matchup against the Dragons? And then a pretty good run coming as well. You've got Warriors, Cowboys, tough game against the Panthers, and then the Dragons again, not on Anzac Day.
Off the top of my head, he averages about 197 in the halves. Now, about 100. I reckon it's close to 100.
It's about 100, yeah.
Yeah. I had this question a fair bit in the Q&A, Tommy, and the answer each time was no, because the way I look at it, unless Walker's done something really, really wrong or is maybe injured, and we don't know, this is a 1 week slap around the face, right? And then Joey goes back to the centres. I personally, I'm not going to get him until I see the Roosters turn it around. And that's like, I need to see Teddy score a try. And then I think I'll be starting to get interested in the Roosters outside backs.
Well, the BE is 110, so you can certainly take a look. But, as with a whole bunch of guys this year, like Reece Walsh, who's gone on a massive run, or Karaz, who's gone on a massive run, it is good to get ahead of the curve. So I could be a little bit tempted to get on this week as I try to make up a few spots. Moving on to the winners. Hayes Dunster, I've got number 1 on the list. Now, I'll preface this by saying I don't think he's a good buy. They've got Bailey Simonson in the reserve, so he could easily drop out. They play the second game of the round, though, so we will know early. But he is very popular. 4th most purchased player this week. I don't quite see it, though.
I don't see it at all, mate. I mean, I know, non-Origin Eels players are good for the buy, but he scored 7 in 80 minutes. It was against the Tigers, wasn't it? And then he scored 26 or 27 in the next 80 minutes. So I don't see this one.
Yeah, I don't see it personally, but we are really scrounging around for cheapies, so you may just have to jump on. Interesting at the Tigers, they're going to debut a bloke called Jareem Buller, who we definitely need to keep an eye on for SuperCoach because he is a debutant. The issue is he's fullback only, so do we really want to carry a cheapie at fullback for SuperCoach when fullback is such a red-hot position?
How good's this, though? He's a fullback only, picked at fullback. And all these people go, mate, you get your positions wrong every time, blah, blah, blah. We got it right. And, I'm going to do a Trent Copeland. I'm going to celebrate my success. We did this one. We nailed it. Well done, us.
Yep, well done. Well, well done to you, really. I was off when that all happened, and I've been bagging you constantly about every decision, but you did happen to get that one right.
I'm going to be honest. I think Wilson did that one.
One thing I'm going to point out now, you've got one wrong, though, as well. and that is Declan Casey, who's been named on the wing for the Bulldogs with all the injuries that they've got. Bottom dollar, but fullback only for SuperCoach. So I think we have to put a line through him SuperCoach-wise, but it'll be interesting to see how he goes with all those injuries at the Dogs.
Yeah, I thought Skelton would get up after he ran for 463 metres and scored 16 tries last week.
Yeah.
I may have doubled one and multiplied the other by 8. But...
He was definitely one of the guys on the list, but I think he is on the extended bench, so he may even be a chance. And there's some chat floating around the office that Carl Oluwapu might debut. He's in jersey 18, but could come in for Kyle Flanagan late in the piece. So he's definitely a guy to keep on SuperCoach-wise.
I don't know if the Dogs stuffed up here, but did you see that Burton and Flanagan have swapped jerseys? Yeah, maybe that's part of the Oluwapu thing, but also it could just be they're trying to convince the Landys that they didn't waste $500,000 bringing this kid over a year early so he could sit in the Reggies.
Yes, potentially. I've got some questions coming through. Nathan Spencer is asking, you can get on Facebook and we'll get onto these, or on YouTube as well. Junior Tupu from the Tigers, a chance of a cash grab. You're keen on him. I'm not that keen just because of the price tag, which is in the 400s. I think the time to get on was a couple of weeks ago.
I brought him in, Thomas, and I have to admit, I made a trade last week when I reckon I was the best part of a bottle of wine to the good. I brought in Kyle Felt. It just seemed to make sense to me. I thought he was due. It didn't pay off yet, so I'm confident that this move, the Junior Tupu move, is going to work better. He's like a taller, better-looking Greg Marzoo. You know, he runs the ball hard. He busts lots of tackles. His worst game's like 45 at the moment, and I'll take that. He's coming off 110, so if I can get a couple of 45s, he'll make some money. If I can get a try, he'll make a lot more.
We've got a question from Nathan Spencer asking, or we'll go Tom Sheargold. Thoughts on Crossland from the Knights to make money? Any love for him?
I don't know, not so much with Ponga back. I know Tyson. I don't know. I know he's playing at hooker, and you know, but Kurt Mann can. I don't know. No.
Yeah, not for me either. We've got a question from Luke about Jesse Arthurs. He's not selected this week. Is he injured? No, it's just that Corey Oates is back into that team, so Arthurs drops out. We've got... What's Manu's position in SuperCoach? Well, he's only centre wing, isn't he? So that's one of the issues. But the rule is if he plays 3 games in the halves, he will earn dual status. So it could be an option for the round 12 updates coming up. Our next winner is Ruben Garrick, most purchased player this week. I think it makes sense with Karaz out. You've got the perfect mix of base stats, particularly with his goal kicking, plus the attacking upside that he offers outside Tom Trbojevic on that left wing for the Seagulls.
Yeah, I mean, before the HIA, he was the best averaging centre in the game. Talking about BEs and stuff, you could wait, because I think he only scored 8 last week, or the week before last, when he was knocked out. So his BE is really high, but he is playing with the Tigers. You know, he could get that BE. I agree, it's a good buy.
On the other winners now, I'll preface this by saying that Brad Arthur has gone back to his original makeup with the forward pack this week, but he did start Jermaine Hopgood at lock last week with Mayan Madison on the edge and Bryce Cartwright on the bench. He's reverted to his old thing this week, so we don't quite know what's going to happen, and they do play quite early, but I would expect with the Eels getting that massive win over the Bulldogs that they will persist with Hopgood starting, Madison on an edge, Cartwright on the bench. 2 big winners there, obviously, in Jermaine Hopgood, who is now a borderline keeper, particularly with a lot of people having just sold, and Ryan Madison being the 3rd most purchased player this week.
I'm looking at getting Maddo this week. I think I prefer him in the middle. Yeah, he had a much better work rate, at 13 than he did on an edge. I like his attacking stats on the edge. 700,000 is a lot of money, and I could get Tohu Harris for 100k less. But to me, it's a little bit like when I was deciding between Payne Haas and Tohu Harris again, and Tarpany. And I looked and went, look, you just got to look at the upside of Payne Haas. His worst game is sort of Tarpany's best game at the moment. Well, that's the same with Madison and Tohu. So I think I'll pay the 100K more and not get the dual position and get Maddo.
Obviously, the big loser, if they do switch back to Cartwright being on the bench, is Bryce Cartwright. So he's one of the most sold players. It doesn't really matter, though, because he's made all his cash. In terms of Maddo, I probably won't go this week, but he is an absolute must before that round 13 bye. He is the player to get in before that round 13 bye. So he'll be featuring in my team before long. I just don't feel you need to rush in, given that his BE is around in the high 40s, I believe. So I don't think
it. Then he'll be New South Wales 18th man.
Yeah, probably. Exactly. Moving on to Zach Hosking. Good to see that even with the cavalry back last week, he's still played 80 minutes. So Liam Martin came back into that team and Luke Garner played New South Wales Cup and Hosking still played 80 minutes on the edge. Then this week, Liam Martin's out injured. So his job security has improved, even though it was perfect as it was. So great news for our man, Zach Hosking. He has maybe peaked. The BE is 57, but I see him as a hold at least until that round 13 bye because he's pumping out keeper scores.
I'll hold him till he's not playing 80 minutes. And I would say that even with Martin back, he played 80, but yeah, that was Martin who tweaked the hammy. So, that maybe wasn't full strength Martin. I still don't see him maybe being 80 when they're a full go team.
And a couple of quick ones on the winners list. Kalen Ponga is back, so he is a guy to look out for, coming back from that concussion, of course. Angus Crichton is a grade of SuperCoach, and he's back, so another one to keep an eye on. Hopefully after a bit of a price drop, and he's back. And Josh Schuster is back as well, so hopefully he takes the field after a few false starts with that quad injury. Let's take some questions. Thoughts on Ruben Cotter for Stefano this week, now that he's starting at lock? You're one of Cotter's biggest fans, but are you necessarily this season?
Oh, I'm more intrigued with him at 13 when they were so stretched that Jake Granville was a prop. 5'7" and 68 kilo. Jake Granville was playing starting prop for them. So McLean back sort of stiffens that middle, but I think he's better at lock than he is as a long playing prop. Yeah.
Question from Sky Armstrong: who to bring in for Keon Kaloa-Matangi? He's out for 6 to 8 weeks. I think the really obvious trade is just go Ryan Madison. Don't overthink that one.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep. And there are people selling Harry Grant. What are your thoughts on this? Because he has the bye, is it next week or the week after? So it makes sense on some level, but he's leading the Dally M's. I know that his SuperCoach scores are a little bit up and down, but I'm just not overthinking this, and I'm going to lock him in at least until round 13 and probably for the rest of the season.
I'll be leaving him there. I can see maybe the reason to not buy Grant. I think the good buy at the moment is Jeremy Marshall-King. If I was going to buy a hooker. But having got Grant, I'm just going to leave him there and try to pair him with Cook or King to finish the season.
Moving on to the losers list, Jacob Carraz. It's unfortunate for him, but 3 weeks. So it's a tempting one. You could hold him. If you're a head-to-head player, maybe you do. There's the tackle there. Head-to-head player, maybe you could hold for 3 weeks, but certainly if you're going for overall, he has to go.
He's made his money. Got to go.
Yep, he's made his money. I mean, he could be... He looms as a keeper for the rest of the year, but I still think you have to pull the trigger there. Keon Kaloa-Matangi, 6 to 8 weeks, so he does have to go. And then onto the buy list. Jared Croker, thoughts?
Nah, not for me.
Really?
Really, because he's not playing this week. So 240s, very good. That's great. But not playing this week. When he comes back next week, Xavier Savage will be available for selection. Played New South Wales Cup last week, plays another New South Wales Cup game, and you'd think goes into the team. That then creates pressure in the outside backs. I'm not saying Croker loses his job, but he's got to be a chance of losing it.
Look, I agree with everything you say, except that Croker, they've won 2 games since he's come back into that team, and he's made a big difference, particularly with his defence and probably with his leadership as well. I think his job security is great. I think he stays in there for an extended time. So I think you can jump on this week, even with Savage due back in the NRL next round. There are barely any cheapies in SuperCoach. Rob, you must have a massive stack of cash. I need to free up cash. You must have a huge amount of cash floating around if you're avoiding someone like Jared Croker.
No, I just like making. I just, if I'm going to get him, it would be next week when he's named again, and Savage is available for selection. I'm not going to get him this week. And I will add, Tommy, I love a Ricky Stewart conspiracy theory. I assume that Ricky does have Croker in his team because when the team were up by 2, playing the Dragons, the call, they get a penalty right out in front. The call goes out from the coach, take the 2. But what's the point of going up by 4? You might as well go up there. It was a very strange move.
On the Raiders, we've got a question from Nathan Spencer saying Kotrick is out injured though, so Croker will stay in. I feel that
he's only out for a couple of days.
Yeah, Savage comes back and goes to fullback, and then Chris goes to the centres. I'm not sure what would happen there. Look, I think that Cheapies are few and far between, and you need to get on at least one this week, and Croker is by far the best of the crop. Certainly better than Hayes Dunster, who I think is a huge chance to get dropped this week.
Yeah.
Moving on to Nicho Hynes. Look, if you didn't get on last week, you can get on this week at 80k more. I think he's a must-have. His run is Bulldogs, Cowboys, Dolphins, Sea Eagles and Knights. He's captain every week for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, someone was talking about, I'm going to go DCE, as a bit of a pod. And it worked last week, but to me, DCE has to be getting everything right and going perfectly to get 100. Nicho Hynes can get 100 in third gear. So over the course of the season, you're going to be way better with Nicho Hynes.
Yep, I think I'm just going to lock him in with a C for the next 5 rounds. Darren is asking, this is a good question for you because you're all over Brendan Hands. Is he a legitimate cheapie? Of course, played the 80 minutes last week and did really well with Josh Hodgson out through illness. But Hodgson's back this week and Hands is back to the bench.
Yeah, look, he's not. But there are no legitimate cheapies at the hooker position. That maybe the best on upside is Sonny Luke, but you'd never play him in your team unless you absolutely had to because you never know if you're going to get a 20 or a 60 from him. There's no good halves, no good cheap hookers. Hands might be the best, but it's a slow burn.
Well, I'll be playing Sonny Luke in my 17 next week when Harry Grant's out.
Yeah, me too.
That's for sure, but I won't be doing it very confidently. Moving on to the holds, Tapane. Joe Tapane is one of the more sold players this week. He's the 5th most popular sell. I don't see it at all. Obviously, he has the bye this week, but he's been super consistent this year. The high score is 67 and the low score is 57. His base stats are 55, so he's safe as. We know he can get attacking stats, and I think they will come. And he is, along with Madison, the forward buy ahead of that round 13 buy. So if you sell him this week, you'll need to bring him back for round 13 anyway. I don't see the sense in this trade.
Yeah, I don't see the point of selling him. I'm holding off on buying. The interesting one is someone was like, his minutes are down. His minutes aren't down. His minutes are... He's averaging exactly 1 minute less than he averaged last year. His tackles are actually up. His run number is almost the same. The issue is the effectiveness and the efficiency of what he's getting with his runs. He's not getting attacking stats. He's not getting power stats. Have teams worked him out after he demolished, teams last year? I don't think so. I think he tends to warm into it.
Yeah, it's a trend with Raiders forwards where they do seem to start slowly and then really hit their straps at the end of the season. What are your thoughts on Jacob Preston as a hold or a sell? He's a popular sell. I'm kind of on the fence with this one because he is averaging 60 and those 60 points in my 17 every week are very handy. But you could also go Preston averaging 60 up to Madison who's averaging 76. That's a pretty serious upgrade.
Well, I went forward up to Madison, but that's because I got that money from selling Val Holmes down to Junior Tupu in my gamble, right? Yeah. I think Preston, I had a good look at Preston. I think Preston's a hold. His base is close to 50. That's exceptional for a second row. You take out that game where he played with a busted hand, or the game with the busted hand, he scored 2 tries in 114. And It was the game after, the week after, where, I think the adrenaline's gone and he's playing with a hand that barely worked. Yeah, you take that out. He's very much keeper sort of numbers. I think he's a hold.
Yeah, he's a hold for me at least until round 13, and then we'll reassess when those buys hit. On the sell list, Olafiana Khan Pereira, he's been so good for SuperCoach this year. made almost 300k, 290 odd k, which it could be the biggest price rise of any player in SuperCoach this year. But the BE is 73, so I think he does have to go. And you can just make a huge profit by selling him to someone like Jared Croker, Hayes Dunster, or you can get to Ruben Garrick or a keeper pretty cheaply as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jojo Fafita's back, but Khan Pereira held his spot in the team, which is impressive. But as you say, the BE's getting right up there. I think you take the cash.
Sunia Taruva, a popular sell as well. He's peaked. He's only made 137k. The BE's 56, and he's got a bit of a better base. I'd be selling Khan Pereira first, but Taruva could go this week as well.
Yeah, he's that one I'm going to hold on to in the hope that he can jag, a try or two with an actual line break as opposed to just jumping on kicks, and then get that second burst.
Let's run through each of the games. Rabbitohs v the Panthers. At the Rabbitohs, Chi Cam is in for Kaloa Matangi, who's out with that ankle injury, and Isaac Thompson is back as well. Who's standing out for you here? Latrell is on a serious run at the moment. If you got on a couple of weeks ago, you'd be pretty happy, but he's too expensive now. I don't think he can get on now.
Yeah, look, AJ and Cody are ripping it up, but the Rabbitoh I really like the look of is Alex Johnson. You're getting him at 500 and something K, about 180K discount on what he was doing, where he finished up last year. He's scored a few tries, but he hasn't had those big games, and he can have those big games, and the price is right. I like Johnson.
I've definitely got my eye on Campbell Graham as well, if he misses that Origin squad.
Price is so high.
It's so high. Hopefully it comes down a bit, but he will be prime, hopefully at around 650k as a prime purchase for round 13. That's what I'm hoping. Panthers, they, of course, have Sorensen back into the starting side, replacing Liam Martin, who's out with that hamstring injury. Lindsay Smith is back onto the bench, so that's good news for people who got on him as a cheapie. And Luke Garner is still out of the 17, so presumably he plays New South Wales Cup. Supercoach-wise here, Taruva is a popular sell. Cleary is absolutely killing it. Is he VC this week up against the Rabbitohs?
Well, it can't be for me because I'm going to have the C on Nicho Hines.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
So I think I'll be C on Hines and just manufacturing a VC somewhere. The other option is the VC on Hines and stick the C down on Garrick or Turbo, but I hate captaining late games.
Eels v the Broncos. The Eels have gone back to their original forward rotation with Hopgood bench, which is a blow, but they do play in the second game of the round, so we should know. And I am expecting Brad Arthur to pull that late switch with Hopgood starting, Madison to the edge, and Bryce Cartwright benched. He'd be mad not to stick with that rotation given how well they went against the Bulldogs over the weekend. Dylan Brown, he is very popular this week. I own him. I have for a while. I paid like 800k for him or something, but you can get him pretty cheap this week. He is very reliable in an unreliable position there at 5'8". I like him.
You can get Dylan Brown for 90k less than I think you and I both paid for him. And he's scoring 60 and doing nothing. Right? At some point, the attack will come through him by hand, and it's going to go better. The eel I want to call out is Penasini for kicking myself. 2 weeks ago, I looked at Penasini and was like, he's getting 50. He's getting 50 in base and not really much in the way of attacking stats. And then bang bang double tries, and he's 610k. He's going very well. I think his base is 37. That is elite for a centre wing. Yeah,
he is looking really good. Certainly his best season and a real breakout season, both NRL-wise and Supercoach-wise. Moving on to the Bronx, they've got Flegler back from the concussion and Corey Oates back from the broken jaw. So 2 Origin players back into that team. Reece Walsh, I didn't get on. This is where the easy games finish and the tough games start. The Eels, I know they're not going particularly well when you look at the ladder, but they are a tough team and they do defend well. This game's at Darwin, though, so I don't quite know how that's going to play out in the heat and the humidity, but I've got my fingers crossed that Reece Walsh, who's been so good, finally just comes back to the pack a little bit this week.
I know how it turns out. It turns out badly for Parramatta. They take this game up to Darwin every year, right? And on rotation, they either play the Broncos or the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you take two teams that are used to playing in hot and humid weather. Like, I don't understand that. If I was taking a game up there, I'd be saying, bring the Storm over or the Warriors. Thank you very much. They're big up in the NT. I'll play them. Doesn't work that way, obviously. You know, the non-territory want, you know, a local team, so they go a Queensland team. I didn't get on Walsh either. It's just a pain in the ass to watch a game, like to check the stats at halftime. Oh, he's on 23. And then, you know, in the last 10 minutes, he scored 63 and he finishes on 100 again. He's braining it. I had people asking, should I sell Walsh this week? I'm like, no, he's 60. I can enjoy it for another week at least.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. Payne Haas is killing it there too. So lots of good attack at the Broncos right now and a real SuperCoach goldmine as it currently stands. Bulldogs v the Sharkies. So many changes at the Dogs, I won't be able to go through them. But Carraz is obviously out. And Avarillo and Burns are both in doubt. So you've got guys lurking on the extended bench, like Jarrell Skelton, for example, who could be a cheapie. You've got the cheapie option in Declan Casey, who unfortunately is only at fullback. So I can pretty much put a line through him for now. But plenty happening at the Dogs. Anyone tickle your fancy? TPJ, maybe?
Max King is going exceptionally well, but he's also priced to the exceptional well now. He's 610k. He's right on Tohu money, and he's dual position, which is handy. But no, TPJ is the one. I liked what I saw in the middle. You know, another game, 2 games, bit of K's in those legs, because he's that prop who can score you 90 with 40 in offloads. That's his upside.
Yeah, with Max King, I'm avoiding him. He's very popular this week, but I would...
He might only be at second row. Anyway, talking.
I'm going to get on someone like Tapane or Madison. I've got those two guys ahead of Max King, even though Max King is killing it at the moment. Sharkies, no changes for them. Who's standing out for you there? Britton Nickera keeps scoring tries, and obviously Hines is a captaincy option in this game up against the Dogs at Accor Stadium.
Almost every year, one forward goes on a run of unsustainable try scoring. You know, Ryan James is my gold standard when he scored, I think, 17 in a season. Nickera might be doing that, but also, you know, like it happens. They get 4 or 5 in 6 games and then they don't get any for a few and the price comes back. He's priced way out of what's reasonable at the moment on his work rate. I see you've just got a comment that must have been a good sledge.
Yeah.
So Nico Hines for me. One is Teague Wilton. He's going very well, 61, 62, 61, but there's not really upside there at the moment. So if I was going to sell one of the mid-range second rows, I think it's him.
Rick is saying, Rob, looking good on the holiday, mate. You should work from home more often. The stress of the office makes you look like a hobo.
Well... Actually, it's surprising. Everyone at work is saying I should work from home more often too. So, yeah, there must be something in that.
Rob's insights are like a game of golf. He's always in the rough. That's a little bit harsh from Harrison Southam. We'll move on to the Cowboys v the Knights. At the Cows, you've got Ruben Cotter starting at lock, and Jason Taumalolo is a pretty significant loss for the Cowboys. SuperCoach-wise, you said that you've sold Val Holmes. I'm holding in the hope that he can jag a try. And look, if he does get big attacking stats that we've been waiting for, surely it's this week against the Knights at home.
Oh, mate, the Knights, they pushed the bloody Premiers all the way to Golden Point. You know, yeah. I mean, that was in Newcastle, to be fair. But, yeah, it was a reluctant sell on Val Holmes. But a bit of a gamble, had to take it. Other than that, I don't like anything in that team.
And Greggy Marzu at the Knights, back to the pack a little bit over the weekend, but still looking pretty dangerous. So he's a hold for mine.
His worst game's 42. You know,
yep.
That's pretty good.
And Kalen Ponga's back into that team, so hopefully he'll be setting up a few tries for the outside players. He does tend to prefer the left-hand side, though. And Marzu's been playing on the right. Is that right? Or the left? He's outside Ponga.
Yeah, on the left outside Bradman Best, yeah.
Yep, so that's a good spot for Marzu to be. Lachlan
I want nothing from this game, except for Kalen Ponga the last 80 minutes. Like, literally the only thing I want to see. I'll sacrifice Marzu's score. I just want to see this guy get through a game.
Dolphins v the Titans. They've got Felice Kafusi back from suspension, but they've lost Kenny Bromwich to suspension. So you've got someone like Connolly Lemuelu, who we were saying what happens when both Bromwich and Kaufusi are back into that team? Surely Lemu Elu might drop out. Well, we don't get to see. We thought we were going to see with Kaufusi back, but we won't get to see it with Bromwich out as well. So we get another week of presumably good scores from Lemu Elu.
Yeah, I mean, look what happens when they move away from the storm protection racket and they start getting suspended for the stuff they've been doing for years.
Isaiah Katoa.
Awkward laugh there, Tommy. Awkward.
Isaiah Katoa. What are your plans with him? Holding? Selling?
Not doing anything wrong. I haven't got any better options. At some point, I'll probably want to sell him and move Schuster down there, but for now, he can just keep ticking along.
At the Titans, Jojo Fafita, as you mentioned, comes into the team on the wing. Philip Sammy goes to the centres and Aaron Shop drops out. So despite this chat about Khan Pereira getting dropped, it doesn't look like that will happen. But there's another factor here, and AJ Brimson is on the extended bench, so he could easily come into that side. Although you would expect he would come in for Jaden Campbell in a straight swap and Campbell would go back to the bench. But, look, who knows? There's a lot of dominoes to fall there at the Titans. Who's standing out for you? David Fafita's popular this week. I already own him, though.
It was a guilty look. I had a look at Brian Kelly yet again.
Yes.
He can do some spectacular SuperCoach stuff. He loves an offload. He's like Nofaluma, he just loves an offload. He also loves a calf injury. So, I couldn't risk it, but I had a look at it.
On to the Tigers now. Dewey's obviously out for the season with the ACL, so Wakeham is at 5'8". And the guy I really want to watch is Jareem Buller. Looks like he could have decent job security there, certainly with Dewey out. They've switched Staines to the wing, and Dane Laurie looks like he's completely out of favour. So they could give him a pretty solid run. Only available at fullback, though, for SuperCoach. So that makes him tough. But if he kills it, you might have to get him in.
He'd have to do something really special. Although I do have Garrick as my second fullback, so it's doable.
With guys like Garrick and Nickel Clockstad having dual position, it is a genuine option. Anyone else standing out for you there at the Tigers, Rob?
My man Junior Tupu. He could do something. The other one is Johnny Bateman. There's a couple of people like, oh, geez, he looks dangerous with the ball, and he is looking dangerous with the ball, but he's also looking like he's about 6 weeks away from peak conditioning. And when I would look at John Bateman as a buy is when he can do 45 in base, not the current 35.
Let's take some questions on Facebook now. Jeff saying Matto is only at 1% ownership. That is crazy for him. He'll be at
about 3% at the moment.
He should be at 30 or 40 by the time he gets around 13. Oliver's asking, what fullback would you recommend buying at this point? I have Turbo and Taruva at the moment. The guy who I think is under the radar this week is James Tedesco. Now, you can get him for basically 200k less than his starting price. I know the Roosters have been out of form, but all this big overhaul from Trent Robinson could have fired him up. I think they could be going okay this week up against the Dragons on Anzac Day. You can get one of the greats of SuperCoach for 600k. It's pretty good, pretty decent buy.
Very, very tempting. Yeah, you're right. He's the value fullback at the moment.
And the same goes for Joey Manu. I know he's not available at fullback, but you can pick him up for a very similar price to Tedesco at centre wing, playing in the halves where we know he scores really well. Onto the Sea Eagles. Schuster and Garrick back for them. Any thoughts of captaining Trebojevic this week?
Yes, and Garrick. Both sort of come into my mind, but in the end, I'm just going to stick it on Hines and be happy with that. Yeah, don't overthink it.
It is, so it's the Tigers who have obviously been leaking points, but it's not at his favourite 4 Pints Park. It's at Campbelltown Stadium. But it is a day game, the 4 o'clock start. So if there's good weather floating around, I could be tempted, but I think Nicho Hines is the go this week.
4 o'clock on a Sunday at Campbelltown, mate. It'll be sleeting. The sun will be setting. They'll be scared of having their hubcaps stolen off their cars. There'll be, you know how Manly fans travel. There'll be none of them there.
Yeah, exactly. Is Josh Schuster a buy now that he's finally back into the team? Look, I've owned him for quite a while and he's just been sitting there collecting dust. Look, now that he's back in the team, he probably is the cheapie of the week. I probably have him ahead of Croker, given that Croker's on the bye. I certainly have him ahead of Dunster, given that Dunster's a decent chance to get dropped.
Yeah, I think he's a legit play this week as well.
Yep, up against the Tigers. Roosters v the Dragons. I mentioned all the changes at the Roosters before. I'm very tempted by Joey Manu. Paul Momirovski probably kicked goals in this team now, with Sam Walker not there. 400 odd K could be a guy for down the track.
I don't think there's going to be a down the track, Tommy. I'll stake the tiny little piece that is left of my reputation on this, that Sam Walker is back in this scene quicker than a lot of people think. Satili Tupanua's back. Love to see that. That puts some pressure on Egan Butcher and anyone who's maybe looking at a 3-round average that's very good and considered a trade in. I'd call your Jets.
On to the Dragons. Ben Murdoch-Masila is back into that pack, which is good news for people who own him. Supercoach-wise, though, there are 2 guys who I have on my radar. I'm certainly not getting them yet, but before round 13, Zach Lomax is one, and Jack Bird playing edge back row, playing 80 minutes. It looks like a real handy purchase with dual position. Real handy purchase before round 13.
Yeah, Bird's on my radar.
We'll take some questions till the end of the show.
We've still got to do Storm Warriors.
Oh, yeah, we do indeed. Storm Warriors. Meany is back, and Nelson Asafa Solomona back into that team as well. Will Warbrick is a popular sell this week. Are you getting rid of him?
Man, every time I don't play that bloke, he scores 80, 65. Kills me. No, I'm not getting rid of him. I'm going to play him just to make sure he doesn't score.
Look, I am getting rid of him this week. I don't want to. I feel like being on the wing at the Storm is a good spot to be, and I think that he'll get another kick at some stage. But you need to get rid of people. You need to make your money somehow, and there is Tedesco and Joey Manu calling. So I think I'll make one of those trades. Moving on to the Warriors. Nia Kore's back, but Curran goes to the bench. Not Jackson Ford, so good news for Jackson Ford.
Yeah, Ford's just plugging along at the moment. There's a little bit more money to be milked out of him, but I moved him on to Maddo.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at holding until round 13 at this stage, but I could get a little bit impatient there and move him on. Let's take some questions. Do you guys think that Schuster will play more than 2 games in a row this season? It's a decent question.
That's a good over-under market, I think.
We'll go, would you sell Sloan or Taruva? Look, at least Taruva has a little bit of base, whereas Sloan's base is a little bit worrying. So I'd probably sell Sloan first. And, of course, Taruva's on the end of a pretty good backline and is due for a few tries.
Isn't Sloan coming off like a 70, though? He's got a pretty good BE, although the week before it would have been a 16, so the BE is going to be tricky. Because you need him to put together 2 games in a row so he can make you cash, and that's not Sloan's forte.
What about this? Holmes to Garrick. Now, look, I own Holmes, and look, I'm going to hold. He's got that good matchup this week, but they've had a number of good matchups, and he hasn't really produced yet. I'm still going to stick with him. He's not doing enough to get dropped, but he's certainly not doing enough. He's been frustrating, that's for sure.
If I was going to pick one player, I'd pick Garrick and wouldn't even think about it. So I could get around that trade.
Nice. Well, that is the end of the teams podcast for round 8. Good luck. Big thanks to Rob for coming to us from the Adelaide Bureau this week. And we'll catch you for the Game Day podcast on Thursday, 11 a.m. We'll see you then.
Cheers.